Picture this. You board, grab a welcome drink, and pass guest services, where the line is wrapped around the atrium. They're not fixing key cards. They're asking to remove automatic gratuities before the ship even sails. That's the tell. This isn't a few penny pinchers. It's a wave. Prices climbed, policies shifted, and the story we were sold about tips stopped matching what shows up on the bill. So here's what we're doing today. We're pulling the curtain on who actually gets your money, why one cruise line tried full transparency and lit a firestorm, and how a brand that once promised tips included quietly reversed course. Most importantly, I'll show you how to support the crew who work the hardest without feeding a system that no longer feels fair. If you've ever wondered whether that daily charge is a thank you or just payroll in disguise, this is your guide. By the end, you'll know exactly what to do on embarkation day and why it matters to real people on board. All right, follow the money. That's where the fuse was lit. The price hike that broke the camel's back. The spark was money, plain and simple. Early 2025, lines rolled out adjustments that didn't feel like rounding errors. Disney's concierge jump an extra $3.75 per person per day pushed that daily charge to $27.25. Stretch it across a 7-night sailing for a family of 4, and you're staring at $762 in gratuities before souvenirs, before specialty dining, before anything feels special. And Disney wasn't alone. Royal Caribbean nudged rates in November 2024. Norwegian set a new ceiling for mainstream cruising, $25 a day for the Haven and Suites. Princess crept upward through late 2024. Even Margaritaville at Sea inched up by $2 a day in early 2025. Line by line, the service charge morphed from background noise into a line item you can't ignore. Here's what that looks like in a real household budget. On a typical 7-nighter, a family of 4 is now in the ballpark of $448 on Carnival, $518 on Royal Caribbean, or $560 on Norwegian money. Most families mentally earmark for shore excursions, photos, a steakhouse night. Instead, it's gone before sail away. And it's charged whether your service is phenomenal or just fine. The numbers matter, but the psychology matters more. In 2023, one line raised rates by roughly 25% overnight. That's when the language lost its magic. A tip is supposed to be gratitude after great service. A fee is whatever a company decides to charge you. When a corporation can spin the dial whenever it wants, passengers stop feeling generous and start feeling managed. That's the fracture point. People don't argue over $2, they argue over control. They want to know whether they're thanking a real person or quietly underwriting payroll. Once that doubt sets in, the guest services line on embarkation day starts to look less like a protest and more like a boundary. And that boundary leads to the next reveal. When cruise lines finally tried to show their work, it didn't calm anyone down, it poured fuel on the fire. When transparency backfired, cruise lines thought the cure was daylight. In January 2025, Celebrity tried something bold. They published a breakdown of where your gratuities go. On paper, it sounded reassuring, about 60% toward dining and galley teams, almost 30% to housekeeping, the rest to hotel services across the ship. Instead of calming the waters, it kicked up whitecaps. Passengers didn't hear clarity, they heard confirmation. If most of that daily charge is pre-assigned before you've met your steward, how is this a tip at all? The comments lit up because the story didn't feel like gratitude after great service, it read like a wage bridge built with passenger money. Then came the second shoe. People learned that on some lines, the pool isn't even ship-specific. It can be fleet-wide. You can hand over a week's worth of appreciation on a Caribbean sailing, and that pool may help fund crews you never met on itineraries months away. Add in credit card processing fees taken off the top before distributions, and now the person who made your week easier gets a haircut you never intended. The optics were brutal. Transparency was supposed to restore trust. Instead, it validated the nagging suspicion that automatic gratuities function more like a pricing lever than a thank you. When a charge is baked in, pooled, skimmed for processing, and redistributed by formula, it stops feeling personal. And the magic of service is personal. That's why the guest services line keeps growing. People aren't just saving money, they're drawing a line between appreciation and accounting. They want their thanks to land in a human hand, not disappear into an algorithm. And just when the industry needed a success story, the one brand that built its identity on tips included made a move nobody saw coming. Virgin's U-turn. Nobody's immune. For years, Virgin Voyages wore a bright red badge of honor. Tips included. No nickel and diming, no math games, just pay the fare and relax. It made them feel refreshingly different in a sea of add-ons. Then came the 25th of September 2025. The CEO announced a pivot. Starting October 7, gratuities would be separated out at $20 per person per night. The explanation sounded noble, more transparency, clearer recognition for crew, but travelers saw the real wave underneath. Price optics. Here's the quiet truth about modern cruise pricing. When fares are displayed side by side on travel sites, the line that lists the lowest base fare wins the click. Virgin's all-in price gratuities baked in kept showing up as higher next to competitors who hide the true total behind a smaller number and a stack of add-ons. Being honest made them look expensive, so they stopped being the outlier and joined the game. The reaction was instant. Loyal sailors said the quiet part out loud. The included promise was your identity. Why throw it overboard? Others called it what it was, a marketing move, not a crew-first reform. If the goal were purely recognition, you could keep all-in pricing and still spotlight who earned what. Breaking gratuities out wasn't about clarity, it was about keeping pace with a race to the bottom that rewards the cheapest sticker, not the truest bill. And that's the lesson. If even the brand built on no hidden fees flips to the industry norm, the pressure isn't coming from etiquette, it's coming from the scoreboard where fares compete. Which brings us to the people behind those numbers, and what they quietly tell passengers when the cameras aren't rolling. Next, what crew members actually prefer, and why a name on a survey can be worth more than a pooled dollar. What the crew quietly tell you. Let's talk about the people behind the charge, because what crew say in private doesn't match the story cruise lines prefer. Current and former crew repeat the same thing. Cash beats automatic gratuities. One former waiter said a typical sailing might bring about 100 euros in hand-to-hand tips, and his best run reached 650 euros. The difference isn't only the amount, cash feels like extra he actually holds. Auto-grats feel like salary. A Royal Caribbean crew member on Wonder of the Seas put it simply, cash, no matter how small, helps us a lot. She also pointed to something even more valuable than money, being named in the post-cruise survey. A name mention can turn into a day off, free internet, the ability to order room service, cash rewards, a specialty restaurant meal, even a nomination for Employee of the Month. That tells you plenty. When one line on a survey means more than a slice of a pooled charge, the system is out of step with how service actually works. Personal recognition carries weight, because pooling dilutes the human connection that makes hospitality matter. Direct cash given to a crew member stays with that person. Carnival brand ambassador John Heald has confirmed it. Automatic gratuities, by contrast, flow into company accounting, get pooled, and are redistributed by formula, sometimes across an entire fleet, beyond the ship you sailed, leaving the individual with a result they can't predict or control. As one crew member put it, when guests remember our names and call us out, we feel seen and appreciated. A simple thank you can brighten our whole day at sea. That isn't the voice of someone who feels fairly recognized by an algorithm. It's the voice of someone who thrives on human acknowledgement. The paycheck problem that changes the conversation. This is the part cruise lines never lead with. Back in 2012, an undercover journalist working as an assistant waiter on the Celebrity Eclipse reported a promised monthly wage of about $1,100 that later landed closer to $710, the difference effectively bridged by automatic gratuities. Maritime attorneys still point out that some entry-level roles can see a base of just a couple of dollars a day. For years, Royal Caribbean was alleged to pay around $50 a month in base salary for waiters and stewards, with roughly 95% of their income coming from passenger gratuities. Families who've seen actual payslips tell a similar story. One woman showed her relatives a statement from her sister a longtime crew member. Almost all of the take-home came from auto-grats, while the company-paid portion was a much smaller line. Her conclusion was blunt. Removing gratuities wouldn't hurt the crew because contracted pay would still be met. Keeping them simply meant the company paid less out of pocket. Carnival brand ambassador John Heald has pushed back hard on that idea, calling it completely untrue and insisting gratuities are not used to fund base wages. The denial is clear, but the uneasy question won't go away. If gratuities are truly a bonus on top of a fair base, why not publish the base salaries by role and show, in black and white, how tips sit above that line? Why not separate wage from gratuity on paper so passengers can see that gratitude is a reward, not a subsidy? Silence shapes perception. When pay structures stay opaque and the daily charge keeps rising, passengers stop feeling generous and start feeling drafted into payroll. That shift in trust is exactly what's pushing more people to guest services on embarkation day. The numbers behind the wave. So how many people are actually pulling the plug on auto-grats? The best snapshot we've got comes from a survey of more than 4,000 cruisers. Roughly 10% say they remove the charge. That may sound small until you watch the line on embarkation day. One passenger described standing at guest services while 8 out of 9 groups ahead asked to take gratuities off before dinner service, before a single towel animal, purely on principle. What's new isn't the right to opt out. That's been there for years. What's new is normalization. On Reddit and in Facebook, cruise communities, seasoned travelers are explaining how they do it, why they do it, and how they tip directly instead. First-timers still tend to leave the default in place. Frequent cruisers, the ones who remember when rates were lower and the language felt truly voluntary, are the ones most likely to say, "I'll handle this myself." Price hikes in late 2024 and 2025 poured gasoline on that trend. When passengers see a daily increase large enough to wipe out a specialty dinner or dent a Shorex budget, they stop treating the charge as a courtesy and start treating it as a decision. That shift doesn't just change a line on the folio, it changes behavior across the ship. Ready for the twist? Other markets solved this years ago without a mutiny. How the rest of the world handles it, and why the US is the outlier. Step off the US pricing island, and the picture changes fast. In Australia, automatic gratuities were pushed overboard years ago. P&O Cruises Australia scrapped them back in 2010 after long-running passenger complaints. Tipping on those ships is now truly optional, offered for standout service, not baked into the math. Crews still get paid, service standards hold, and nobody spends embarkation day arguing at a desk. Other brands adjusted by market rather than by slogan. Royal Caribbean folds service charges into the fare on bookings paid in Australian dollar or New Zealand dollar. Same ship, same crew, same itinerary. Yet the Australian and New Zealand guest sees a cleaner, all-in number instead of a separate daily add-on. When Royal pushed an increase in 2023, the Australian market didn't feel the same jolt because the structure already absorbed it. Across the UK, the philosophy is similar. P&O Cruises UK talks about excellent service as part of the promise, not an expectation you bankroll with a near-mandatory add-on. The fare reads like a fare, not a teaser rate, backed by a drip of extras. Those markets prove a simple point. This can be done. When lines say gratuities can't be included without pricing people out, Australia and the UK stand there as counterexamples. It isn't about possibility, it's about what each market has been trained to accept. American cruisers have been conditioned to read a low base fare and treat everything else as later. Other regions asked for the full number up front and got it. If the goal is trust, all-in pricing builds it. If the goal is to win the search page with the cheapest sticker, you end up exactly where we are now. Generous people feeling conscripted, and crew caught in the middle. What you should actually do? Start by knowing your rights. Every line will remove auto-grats at guest services if you ask. No speech required. They might try to talk you through options, but the choice is yours. Next, decide what outcome you want. If the goal is to respect the people who keep your cabin running and your dinners smooth, 2 moves work better than any policy memo. Keep the automatic charge in place to protect the baseline, then carry small bills and thank individuals who make a difference in your day. a 5 tucked into a bartender's hand after they rescued a drink order, a few singles for the buffet attendant who hunted down an allergy-safe option, something extra for the steward who solved a problem before you noticed it. Those moments matter because they land exactly where the effort happened. Names matter even more than bills. Write them down during the week. At the end of the cruise, mention those names in the survey. That single line can unlock a day off, internet time, bonus consideration, and the kind of recognition that follows a crew member from contract to contract. Gratitude turns into a record, not just a memory. If you object to auto-grats on principle, replace them with intention, not silence. Remove the charge, then tip directly in amounts that match or exceed what you would have paid. Prioritize your room steward and dining team, and remember the less visible roles, buffet crew, public area cleaners, who lift the experience without ever stepping into a photo. What doesn't work is subtracting the fee and walking away. That turns service into a free ride, and no one wants to sail next to that energy. The common thread is control. Whether you leave the default on or take the reins yourself, steer your thanks toward the people who earn it. The ship runs on human effort. Make your gratitude human too. The 2025 Gratuities fight looks like numbers on a folio, but underneath, it's a trust story. Passengers stop believing that a daily charge behaves like a thank you. Lines could fix that tomorrow by folding wages into the fare and showing, in plain language, how tips sit above a fare base. Until that happens, the pressure valve will be the guest services queue. Change may come from policy, it may come from passengers choosing differently. Either way, crew shouldn't be collateral damage. Aim your appreciation where it's earned, and the week at sea feels better for everyone. If this gave you clarity for your next sailing, tap like and subscribe to Quick Cruise Tips. Drop a comment, do you keep auto-grats or remove them and tip direct? If you found a system that feels fair to you and the crew, share it below. I read every one. Safe travels and smooth seas. See you at sea.